There are three lower energy centers: the root, the sacral, and the stomach area. This is what is called the egoic state. One creates a little bit of pain and suffering, lack, not enoughness, lust, rage, anger. All of these types of emotions are available to that level of consciousness, or third dimensional reality is really felt in the three lower energy centers. As a human starts to expand by their desire to feel better than what they have been feeling, they start to unfold the energy. We talked about that too, that is lying at the base of the spine. It starts to come up into the heart center. And as this center starts to activate or open, a human starts the transitional process of recognizing that they are a creator and that they are able to create by how they think and how they feel in their experience. And when they first do this, they bobble a little bit. They go back and forth between third dimension and the fourth dimension of reality, of recognizing that they create how they feel, but then yet condemning and judging as they notice that they do something that they had sworn they were not going to do. Yeah, this is a very natural phase, and it's one that you need to love yourself in or accept as a natural process of the rise of consciousness.
Welcome in. I am so excited for this conversation today. We're going to have some great topics with a wonderful woman that you guys are all going to enjoy. If you're new here, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you'd like to keep track of what's going on the planet right now, and I know it can seem a little overwhelming, you might want to sign up for our Friday morning email newsletter. The link is in the description box down below. Every Friday morning, we send out a very short, very sweet, but informative email newsletter talking about what we think are the important developments around the planet right now. So if you want to keep track of things and get the short list, you might want to sign up for that email. It's super easy, super free, super fun. Link is in the description box down below. I think you're going to love it. In today's toxic world, taking care of our health is more important than ever. One of the natural solutions I've integrated into my routine is the benefit of mushrooms. And the go-to place for me is Birch Boys. They are without a doubt one of the greatest resources for mushroom products on the planet. Made in the USA, sustainably sourced, and run by an absolute wonderful entrepreneur, Birch Boys has become my go-to for natural health solutions. While they have a wide variety of mushroom products, the two that I use every day are right here. First, I use the ChagaNOW, which is a wonderful mixture that I put a tiny little scoop in my morning coffee to support my immune system. Chaga is one of the most effective immune support compounds on the planet, and this is a super way to get it into your daily diet in an easy to use formula and very, very effective for immune system support. And if you're looking for clear thinking, I can tell you, you'll be surprised at the effects of Lion's Mane. I use this Lion's Mane tincture, 1 teaspoon every single morning, and the difference in the clarity of my thinking is extraordinary. I was actually really, really surprised. Birch Boys has a whole lineup of mushroom tinctures. Make sure you check them out when you're on the website, but I'll tell you what, these are my two favorite, and I use them every single day. They are absolutely a quality company built on integrity. Go to birchboys.com and use the code NEWEARTH for 20% off your entire order. Birch Boys mushroom products, I think you're going to love it. And with that, I want to welcome in channeler Robin Jelinek. Hi, Robin. How are you today?
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Great. Thank you.
I'm so excited. And I told Robin before we came on that I love having women my age on the channel because there's just a connection and a history. So I'm really thrilled to talk with you. Now, you're a channeler for Athena in Truth. Most people that are watching are going to know that. But what I want to know is, how'd you get there? It's like, how does a grandma start channeling off-planet beings, and what was your process for doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways that I would describe the experience or the journey that I was on is I didn't know whether I was chasing it or it was chasing me. Sometimes I thought that this Kundalini energy, that I had an interest and I was going after it and looking for it. And then other times it would come searching for me, even when I wasn't looking for it. So I still haven't determined which of those things that it actually was. From my early 20s on, very interested in spirituality, just loved all of the books about mediums and channeling. And, I've read everything, hundreds of books I consumed, but probably between the age of 20 and nearly 40. Then when I hit my early 40s, my kids were getting older. They went to college, and I remember going through kind of a period of grief because I really loved being a mom and having them at home. I remember walking by their rooms and sitting on their beds and having a cry. It was like somebody passed away almost. And then I really got into more practices. I kind of got very interested in the chakras. That was something I was drawn to. And once again, I don't know why I felt that way. That was something that innately just started to happen. So I read a number of books about that. And I did start doing a nightly practice where I would breathe into each one of the energy centers with the intent that whatever was stored in there, I would get access to and start to really observe myself in the way that I felt in my experience from some of the
Okay,
books I had read.
let me ask you a question about that because I really want to drill down into this whole Kundalini rising experience because I think it's fascinating. And I think that a lot more people are going to be going through this experience as we move forward. When you were breathing into those energy centers, what bubbled up or what came up? What results were you seeing, or what could you say, I did this and this is what happened?
Yeah. So I very quickly realized that they were perceivable or they could be felt by you through your intention of focusing on them. And so basically, when you intentionally imagine bringing energy into each one of those energy centers and you breathe into them, you have to look at it as something real, real energy, something of substance is coming into that energy center. And when your energy centers are clogged up with a lot of emotion, perhaps you've had a lot of experiences that you've suffered in unconsciously and not really knowing that you were containing the emotion in you yet. Those get stuck in those energy centers. Each one is representative of an area of your life. So as I would breathe into each one of those energy centers, I very quickly realized that the ones that were containing a lot of energy or emotion started to throb. They actually started to feel as though the energy I was pulling or driving into them was not being allowed access. It just couldn't get in there. Then I would kind of skip around a little bit. And then I came to the conclusion, maybe I'm just going to focus on the ones that are really throbbing, the ones that don't seem to want to allow energy into them. And that's what I did. I started to isolate each one of those energy centers, breathing into the ones that the energy wasn't moving. Eventually, I would get some progress and I would notice that that center would open up. And then I would also notice that there would be emotion expressing in my experience. I would start to feel sad for no reason. I would start to feel maybe angry and not really be able to pin it to something. So I started to realize that through that intent and that focus and bringing that divinity, energy, pure consciousness, awareness, that's really what you're drawing into your energy centers when you focus. I started to notice that I started to release things. And then I would go back to running all of the energy centers nightly like that. I would do that like 2 or 3 times a night before I would go to sleep. I would say about 2.5 months into that practice, and I was pretty regular with it. There was something driving me to do it. And that's why I think Kundalini energy is already active if you're wondering about it, if you're inquiring about it, and most often if you're coming in front of me, because it's primarily what I do in my practice with clients is work on that energy. And so you wouldn't find yourself in front of someone or even having this conversation if it weren't something that was already starting to stir. This is something that I discovered later in my experience. And so after about 2.5 months of doing that practice, running up them down each one 3 times nightly, I had what I can only call an otherworldly experience. I felt my hand shoot up into the air. I'm not an overly religious person. I have no reason to reach out, but I did. And I felt what I can only describe as a strike of lightning that came down my arm. And with that, there was a kickoff or an igniting of those energy centers. I heard them start to spin. I felt them in my body, just as real as you would feel anything else in your body. They started revving and spinning. It sounded like thousands of hummingbirds had been turned loose in the room. I found myself unable to move. I was stuck. I wanted to reach over and notify my husband, there's something going on here, and it's quite loud, and I can feel a lot of things. But he had some awareness that something had gone on. He thought he heard something, but it didn't really wake him. I think he had kind of a cold, and he was sleeping pretty firmly that night. So that whole experience went on. After the revving up, the sound, the spinning, the knowing that they were all moving, felt the snake rise, I had read about and talked about. It felt like something was actually inside of my body, uncoiling and coming up and hitting each one of those energy centers. There were a number of places where it actually got stuck or blocked because it must have hit blockages. That's all I can describe. And it would back up and hit again. There was a little discomfort with it. It felt pinching. It felt a little bit uncomfortable. That occurred. Then it finally went most of the way up, I can only assume, but I think it veered off. I didn't get what was a full rising. I got a partial rising because of the many emotional blocks that were still in my body. I had not really done the work or really even knew that there was something that I needed to do in order to clear all that out. And then what happened was the energy rose all the way to the top, or as far as I think that it went. There's no way of determining exactly. Then it came back down, and it felt like a hot lava, or I can only describe it kind of like a child being born. I felt it pour through each one of those energy centers as it came back down through my body. When it hit the base, there was what I can only describe as a full body orgasm. That's what happened. And then the whole thing ended, and I was in shock. Something had occurred that I knew about it, I had read about it, but when you finally experience it, that's something quite different than reading about it.
How long do you think it was from the start of the experience, Robin, to when it culminated?
Yeah, and that's a good question. There's a lot of people who talk about Kundalini risings, about going into a bliss state for days, weeks, months, sometimes. I didn't have that experience. I would say it was minutes, just a number of minutes for me. And then when it came back down to the bottom, and that could be because of a partial rising, that might be. Maybe I didn't get the full connective experience. How do I know I had a partial rising? There was a lot of emotional upheaval. I was never really a person that was took one to cry for no reason or to have ups and down swings. I'm just not like that. And I felt like I had a lot of emotion that was coming up. And it was the kind of emotion where you just wanted to be by yourself and let it pour out, but you didn't know why it was coming or where it was coming from. And I was really grateful that my kids weren't at home anymore. They were both in college, because this would be something that wouldn't be normal to them. They'd probably be a little disturbed by it. And it was that went on for a number of months. I needed very little sleep. All of the things that I used to enjoy in my life, like going out for dinner, going shopping, getting something new, everything flatlined. I didn't enjoy the same friendships. I found that I didn't want to go out very much. And then that went on for off and on for probably a year and a half. About that time, my husband and I went on a vacation to Bora Bora. This is the role he plays, I think, in this whole thing. He's suggesting places that we go all the time, and it seems like every time we go somewhere, that's when something happens to me. But we went there, and on the first night, we were in an over-the-water bungalow, and I went to lay down, and I was just going to go through my energy centers, which was a practice that I always did. And I didn't even start. I just had the thought that maybe I would do it, and I immediately felt pinned to the bed, and I felt the energy come down through the top of my head. This was more unfamiliar to me because it almost felt like a jackhammer. That's the only way I can explain it. It was pushing, and it was so loud. And there is a little bit of pain, not something you can't tolerate, but definitely aching or pain. And this time my husband could hear it. He was awake for the whole thing, and he actually heard what sounded to him the only way that he could describe, like thousands of people murmuring. That's the way that he said it sounded. So once it broke through the crown, I had that same whooshing sound and that same spinning noise. So I knew that it was the same energy that had risen from the bottom, had now come down. And then it poured, that hot lava kind of came through my chest. And it was just a moment of recognition that, oh, okay, this had veered off there, could not make the ascent this way. So it came down through the top. I haven't done a lot of study or reading about that. In the early days, I studied Kundalini a lot, because when you have that experience, you want to know all about it and what to expect. But I haven't seen a lot of people who've had it come down through the top of their head. But that's my experience. That's what happened to me.
Now, what about your perceptions? Were they broadened? In other words, were you getting telepathic? Were you hearing things that you would not normally have heard? In other words, were you opening up in that realm?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was greatly noticeable. I would definitely say it was a time of learning, a time of searching, a time of healing, kind of looking at everything that I had going on in my own emotional state and why I had it. So there was a lot of that going on, a lot of self-observation, and a lot of condemning and judging of myself. One of the things that happens when the Kundalini energy rises, it illuminates everything within ourselves that's actually denying that really good flow of connection that we want to have. And so part of the job of that energy is to show you areas in your life where perhaps you're not open, or you have some thoughts or perceptions that are actually hindering your connection. And so you start to see a lot of things in yourself. And then what happens, because you're on a spiritual journey and you've learned from everyone else that you're never supposed to have a bad thought or think a bad thing, you move into this condemning, judging, hateful state of yourself, which is what I did. And that just made everything slow down. It just actually is what the dark night of the soul is caused by. It's caused by your own condemning and judging of yourself, that you're not perfect. You don't deserve this. You have to be better than you are. Somebody else is better than you are. All those types of feelings were kind of coming up inside of me. And then after a number of years, that went on. The Kundalini energy is odd in the fact that it'll be very active sometimes, and it might shut it down for a year. It might not do anything. Or every time you sit down, you'll be shaking and your mouth will be pulled different directions, and there'll be kriyas that will be going on. And that's very active now, and that doesn't seem to stop now since I started channeling. Between the ages of 43, when that energy first took off, to the degree that I started channeling, which was probably around the age of 61 or so, it was periodically coming and going. It wasn't steady all the time. Sometimes I just go back to my life and think, I'm closing the spiritual books. I've had enough of it. Sometimes you can rile yourself up so much on a spiritual path that you forget that you are a human and that you have a right to enjoy what humans enjoy. So sometimes I would just push it aside and go away from it. And that's actually something that I really recommend to people now. You can get too out of balance, and that energy is another consciousness. It's actually running alongside of the one that you are. And so if you give up too much of your power to it, it begins to kind of take you over. There are many people who activate their Kundalini who quit living, who just sit in ecstasy all day long in that energy, and don't really carry on with their lives. And that's not something that I'm recommending, or even the group that I channel recommends. The whole idea of raising your Kundalini energy is to express the soul aspect of yourself alongside yourself as a human, so that you can enjoy both the expression of being human, as a God in form, basically. That's kind of what the whole idea of implementing that energy is. It's not to let it take you over, and to go off into la la land and not live your life as a human in the way that you meant to.
My understanding is that the Kundalini energy is actually the natural unfolding of the human. And so we're just, and it sounds weird to say this,
Yeah.
but we're just not quite all there yet. In other words, we're not quite fully human. And I know that sounds funny, but
It's
if that
perfect. It sounds
energy
perfect.
is designed to be part of our human experience, then we're moving in that direction, definitely.
Yeah. Well, when you come in as a human, that high energy vibration that you are, as a God source, has to come down into a condensed form. Many people will say, well, why do we have to come here and not remember anything? Well, it's because you can't contain everything. In the low density that you're residing in, and in the solid form that you've taken, you can't bring all of that energy, and you just fry the body. There would be no way that you could actually do that. So all of the energy is there, but much of it gets packed down in the base of the spine. That's where the Kundalini Shatki energy resides, right at the base of the spine. When a human begins their experience, primarily they're operating out of the first three lower energy centers, and that's what keeps you alive. Some people call that the egoic state, and they think that's a bad state. It's not a bad state. It's where you believe that you have to effort. It's where you believe that you need to get something from someone else, or someone's better than you, or lust, or control. All of these kinds of things are part of the experience when you're operating from the three lower energy centers. And so after you're there for a while, and you suffer a little bit, that call in suffering starts to bring in your divinity. And then you get in front of someone that maybe makes you remember there's something else in you besides just that, or what you're perceiving. And then just that noticing and that understanding that you can create through your thought and through your focus actually starts to open that center. The heart center starts to open. And then some of that energy can now be contained in the body that maybe in the lower tone it could not. And so you start vibrating at a high enough rate that you start to be able to allow that energy to naturally start rising. The first thing that happens is what I talked about earlier. You will notice everything you're doing wrong and you will condemn and judge yourself for it and everyone else.
Okay,
That's
so
normal.
here's my question about that. And
Mhm.
I know that that happens. It's, the dark night of the soul. And it happens a lot when people come back from NDEs. Like
Yeah.
they get back here and they're just like, oh my gosh, I got to do this thing again. I know I know what reality is. What came up for me is I wonder if that is the programming, the negative programming that's in this third density about who we are. And that's the battle. Because if you're bringing in that higher energy, you're also the duality is going to bring in that negative energy, and it's kind of a battle back and forth. Does that make any sense to
Yeah,
you?
it is just a natural transition. You're not quite ready to accept it. You're not quite ready to understand it. And so as that energy is trying to merge with you, and that's actually what's happening, the two of you are merging together, there's a little bit of rebellion. There's a little bit of not understanding or believing what's even going on. And so you slip back and forth out of your ego and into that divinity and back and forth. And then you start to become more familiar with the divinity part, and then you get more angry with the egoic part that you want to get rid of. After a while, then that energy starts to rise and it's coming up further into the fifth dimension, they would call it, of creation, where you start to recognize that I'm always going to have feelings. I'm always going to be in contrast and be feeling things in my experience that feel as I would deem them good and bad, right and wrong. But what happens is in higher levels of consciousness, different choices become available to you. Negativity is not held on to as long and it's not as pungent as it once was. Choices in the type of emotions that you choose to feel, the anger, the jealousy, the rage, the disappointment, all of those kinds of things, they get felt, but not to the level of intensity
Yeah.
you
And
become them.
I've heard that those negative energies that you're talking about right now, you almost can't even hold on to them.
No, you
Like
can't.
they just sort of flew away, you
Yeah,
know?
they do. And that's not you doing it. And that's a good thing because in the beginning, when you think you're doing it, then you're judging and condemning because you're not doing it. But when you finally accept the fact that you're not doing it, then you feel good about it. And you realize that, I'm rising into a state of consciousness where certain things that used to bug me or used to set me off, they just don't do it to me anymore. And it's not because I'm a more connected human. It's because the divinity part of me has access to me and it's transmuting and changing me in that energy. And therefore, the choices that I used to make are just no longer available to me. It's not that I've become smarter than, higher than, or better than anyone else. It's that I have more high energy coming into me that's likening me to my source.
So you've kind of shifted your operating system.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once
Okay.
again, the operating system, once in a while, doesn't operate. So, I mean, I'm not here to say that I don't have emotions, but I am here to say I'm getting better and better at observing them and allowing them and releasing them. That's all that's happening. But you still get them. It's not that you're going to move out of being a human or that you're going to move to a state where you don't feel anymore.
Yeah. I found for me that as I've moved forward on my journey, it's as if those negative emotions are no longer interesting.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go do this fun thing, this interesting thing. I'm going to
yeah.
discover this or look into that. It just becomes the fascination with those, maybe deeper emotions and like rage, judgment, anger, or, all that kind of, it's just like,
Well, part of it is you're not identifying with it. The love of self is I allow myself to have a free will choice in the way that I think and feel. I no longer attach to or condemn or judge myself for any feeling that I have. So what's the point in having them? Now, the whole point in having them before was the judgment, the condemnation, the idea that I had to be better than what I was. But once you get rid of that concept, those emotions become less effective or
Mhm.
something that you decide not to choose.
Yeah, they're just not even applicable anymore.
Yeah.
One question I have for you, I'm fascinated with the whole Kundalini
Mhm.
energy thing, which is just, that's an indication right there. Some people have a full blown Kundalini experience that just completely wrecks them for the next 2 to 3
Yes.
years
Yeah. Hmm.
because their perceptions are so wide open that they've got to learn to not listen to that person 3 doors down talking in their kitchen and seeing what's going on the other side of the planet. You've got to be able to focus into what it is you're doing in your reality at that moment. So
Yeah.
that can be definitely almost disabling. I mean, I've seen and heard people talk about they were just wiped out for a few years because
Yeah.
they couldn't bring it in enough to be able to function. It sounds like what you had is more manageable in that it's a slower integration into your system. So it doesn't blow out all the jets and you're not left like in the middle of the floor wondering what the heck's going on. I mean, I have a girlfriend that had a full-blown Kundalini and was sitting in her living room with the dragon licking her hand.
Hmm.
So how do you do that and then go make dinner?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that certain experiences come to people because they're open to them, or they would find that satisfying. I'm not a person that and then sometimes I use the word, I don't know if it's the correct term to use. I'm not really like a la la person or someone that is talking about fairies or dragons, and I'm not saying they don't exist. That's not what I'm saying. But for me personally, it's not stimulating, or it's not something that piques my interest, really. And so it's hard for me to speak to these people that are having these kinds of experiences, whether or not that would be something that they've attracted to themselves in the way that they've lived their lives, or in what they find fascinating. Or, for example, I couldn't have known that I would be teaching and helping and assisting people awaken their Kundalini, and then how to deal with the dark night of the soul and how to avoid it, some of those things. But looking back, having the experience that I had, the very slow process and actually going through the dark night of the soul and understanding it in more detail, that's what brought me to the place or point of what I'm doing now. So I can only imagine that if they can get through what it is that they are experiencing, that they will be able to put the dots together or see how that's applicable in their life or how it's going to serve them, because I really think it will. What happens is they get so caught up in the suffering, so caught up in the oddity of it, that they start creating from there and start enhancing that amount of energy. Where if they would start to direct themselves in the way that they prefer to feel, they would probably get a better result than the one that they are presently getting.
Yeah. Is it your opinion today that anyone can, I want to say anyone can have a Kundalini experience, which of course they could, but anyone can trigger it or generate it?
Yeah, it is my belief that that is possible. But what happens is people who are activated by gurus, let's use that term, or people that are known to just touch people and activate their Kundalini, they are giving all of their belief and perception to the person that is conducting that process or practice. Let's use that. It's really the belief that does it. If you can get a person in front of you and get them to believe that they actually have this power, that it's actually there for the taking, and that all they need to do is desire it and focus on it and love it, they would get it. But it's to make people understand that and to actually believe that they are the divinity that they are, without yet experiencing it first. That's the most difficult stage or part. So when I work with people, I really try to, as much as I can, get them to understand what a really normal person I am and how not perfect I am. And it happened to me. And in that way, that they could believe and perceive that they too could actually have that experience. So it is my belief, because I know I did it. And I know I'm not perfect. And I know that I'm just a regular person like anyone else. I'm not one that's been meditating hundreds of hours or been in spiritual retreats week in and week out. That's not what I've done. I've done it through the desire. I did it through the sheer love of it, the appreciation of the material, of loving to learn, loving to read all different authors and their experiences about it. Those are the kind of things that will bring that experience to you, is just the pure joy and love and desire to have it happen and know that you can.
So, what would you say are the benefits of the Kundalini energy? Why would someone want to have that happen to them, a Kundalini awakening?
Yeah. Well, it creates a great magnetism. It actually, if you are working in the spiritual world or practice, it's going to draw a lot of people to you. You're going to get well known pretty quickly and have a lot of clients and be pretty busy because it has a attractive quality to it, something that creates magnetism. It is non-discriminatory. There are people who have raised that energy and actually not used it for the help of humanity. Those would be people that have run cults or brought people in that they've actually used it in ways that were harmful. So what one has to understand is that as a creator, there is no judgment. There is no right and wrong, good and bad. That if you have a strong desire to activate that energy, whether or not you were using it in purity, wouldn't matter. It could actually happen, and it has happened. So it comes with a great responsibility. And those aren't the people that I want to activate. I really would like to activate people that would like to use it for humanity purpose. But I'm just making it clear that that energy doesn't discriminate that. It doesn't discriminate, it doesn't look at anyone as being good or bad. And quite honestly, a lot of those people that do that end up coming around to the right understanding or recognition that maybe that wasn't the right way to be. So it does usually right itself eventually anyway. So it's just to really understand that that energy is an energy that drives you forward. There are many times when I've thought, why am I doing this? I'm 65 years old. I got grandkids. I'm retired. I like to play pickleball. It's interrupting my game once in a while, these types of things. And every time I think that, and I think, well, maybe I should just hang it up. I don't have to do this. There's an energy behind you that just drives you forward, that actually creates this purpose, this desire to serve. It just comes automatically with it. So those are the things that I would say. I do think it makes you more vibrant. It makes you more healthy. It makes you need less rest, actually. So having your energy centers open gives you access to more life force energy. And so in all areas of your life, that enhancement is a good thing.
Yeah, wonderful. So let's kind of move forward into how the channeling started for you. Know, a nice lady from the burbs that has been packing lunches. How does this happen to you?
Yeah, so I was in Florida at the time, and once again, that energy got kind of active. I would put it aside sometimes for a year. I wouldn't do anything with the Kundalini energy. I just wouldn't have a desire. And then all of a sudden, I got a desire to do some breath work. And I was on a show that my son had told me about. Oh, what is that called? Clubhouse. That's what it's called. And in Clubhouse, there's every different topic going on with every different person in every country in the world. So you can be a member on Clubhouse and drop into random conversations with people all over the world. In this particular night, my son is a music maker. He makes electronic music, and he was in a music room. And I happened to click on the Clubhouse site, and I saw that he was in there, and I thought, oh, I'm going to drop in there, and then you can type hi, and your face comes up, and they kind of know you're there listening too. And the person, a lot of times, what I found in artistic rooms and in music rooms, they were often talking about spirituality, which I found kind of surprising at first. So those people are naturally drawn to that, and now I'm realizing that it's a form of channeling, really. That's what's going on when people are creating magnificent art and music. So it's only natural that they would want to cultivate their spiritual experience. So this particular night, this man was talking about a breath work that he used. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to try that. That's something I never really dabbled in. And I would say the spiritual journey is much about picking up breadcrumbs. When something came to me, that's one thing I was very good at. And I would probably recommend that to people if you're wanting to awaken your Kundalini. You just keep going to the next thing and the next thing that comes to you. So I started doing the breathwork practice, and right away I started to notice that as I did it, I had steady eye leaking. It wasn't tears, it was just steady water coming out of the corner of my eyes. My whole face would be wet. And then I started to notice these releasing yawns that would last for minutes, that you would just feel them building. Normally you get a yawn and you think, oh, it'd be nice to yawn. But this was like minutes of expectation of waiting for the yawn to come and then it coming so loud and so long, just like huge amounts of energy being released through yawns. Then I noticed my mouth started to feel like it was pulling in one direction and the other direction, and I wasn't doing it. And I remember going out and telling my husband there is something really odd going on when I do my breath work. And he's not closed-minded, but he has his own things that he's interested in, and he doesn't really care that much. And he said, well, I don't know. Looks, I kind of taped it a couple of times to show it to him. And he said, I don't even like looking at that. It looks kind of strange, your mouth getting pulled around. So that went on for a while. And then one particular day while I was doing the breath work, in my mind before I laid down to start, I was asking a question about confidence because I didn't have a lot of confidence. I think being heavy as a child and picked on quite a bit eroded my confidence. And even though probably around the age of 13, I lost all the weight and I never gained it back, I carried that with me, that emotional trauma. And so every time I participated in anything, I just didn't feel as though I could win or that I was confident, even though I was a good tennis player. If I came up against someone that I could feel that real strong energy, I would fold. I would just feel myself not be able to stand up to that. So that morning, when I was doing that breath work, and I asked the question to myself, when am I going to get some confidence? This is ridiculous. I'm, 60 whatever years old. I'm at the end of the handle on the tennis grip, and I'm a good player. I think I had lost a match to someone I shouldn't have. And then all of a sudden, I felt myself just sit up, and I didn't do it. My body just sat up. And my head went back, and this is an audible voice that I heard, which I don't hear that now when I channel. And the audible voice said, "This is what a woman in her power feels like. How do you like the feel of it?" And I remember thinking,
Wow.
this is really odd. This is not something that I would ever think about. And so I again went out and told my husband, and he kind of ignored me again and thought, well, whatever's going on in there. He didn't care, but he didn't say much. And so about a week or two later, I went to Fort Lauderdale and visited my son there. And I was telling him, I said, I've had some really odd experiences. And I explained the mouth pulling, the yawning, the eye leaking, the sit up thing that happened, the different movements that started to happen to my body without me doing them. And as soon as we started talking about it, the body started moving. It started to make gestures and move. And he said, looks to me like somebody in there would like to talk. And then they did. That's when it started. It was through
Oh,
invitation. So what I've learned now is that energy doesn't come forward unless I think about it. In the beginning, of course, you're thinking about it all the time because it's odd and you're wanting to explore it because it's just something you've never felt before. So I felt like the first 3 to 4 weeks were kind of overwhelming because it was like day and night because I couldn't quit thinking about it. They were constantly coming.
oh. So
And so
I've heard them use the term that they are thought provoked.
thought provoked.
And
Yeah,
what that made me think of is isn't everything.
it is. The universe is. That's how the
Yeah,
universe,
that's how you manifest.
or it
It's thought
becomes so
thought
apparent.
provoked.
Because I have a thought and they will immediately have a response the minute I have a thought about something. And that's where all my podcasts come from, all my written transmissions. I'll be pondering a question within my own mind and then the response comes. That's how it works. So once I figured that out, that I could just quit thinking about them and I could have more peace and not be doing it all the time, it very quickly got adjusted. It was a little hard at first. There was a lot of pain in my voice box, sweating, not very comfortable. It wasn't fluid. It was more feeling like there was resistance in there. But I would say after a couple of months, that all smoothed out and it became much more manageable to do it.
So you started channeling primarily in the beginning. Were you just taping yourself, or how did you work with it before you kind of went public? And how did you end up going public with it?
Yeah. So when they first came in, and I do get a knowing, I would describe it as a knowing. The knowing was the first year is going to be spent with the family. So there's going to be a lot of interaction or channeling between family members, and there was between my son and his wife, and my other younger son and my husband. It was really going through their emotional basis or things that they maybe were holding that they were not able to release or let go of. And so that was a little uncomfortable for me as Robin. But I have to say, I'm really fortunate with the people that I have close to me. I have lovely daughter-in-laws, and my sons are very open. And although sometimes that energy can be pungent, depending on if you're holding something that you just can't move out of, if you have a judgment or a perception that's really affecting your life, but you believe in it. That's what a lot of people get stuck in. And I'd use the example of like just feeling as though you have to tell everybody that's doing something wrong that they're doing something wrong. Yeah. If you see somebody throw garbage out the window, that you have to condemn and judge them rather than go pick it up yourself and hope that someone sees you doing that and decides that that's what they're going to choose to do. You don't get the result that you want by criticizing and hating someone else. And so those were things that people who think they're really good people, who are kind of righteous, they have that practice and they don't want to give it up because they're very rooted into the idea that makes them the persona or the good person. And that's a hard one to get someone to really face and to get them to let go of. So there were a lot of things like that that went on for the first year. Then after that, of course, some friends started to find out of theirs and of mine. And then there were people that just got private sessions, and I just did those for free, not just to see how they went and how people were liking them. And of course, they went well. People did like it. And then shortly after that, I began, my son designed a website for me. And I think the biggest blowout that I got was the first time that I went on the Next Level Soul. I had over 80 sessions come in from that viewing, and I was not prepared for it. I had no idea that I would get that kind of work coming in. My schedule was just packed every day of the week, 3, 4 sessions a day, and it was really burned me out. It was really a lot of work at my age, but I got through it. I had to because they were all, scheduled. But I've gotten very careful now at how I protect my schedule when I go on those types of podcasts that have large followings. And that the confidence came. It got better and better. The more that I did those private sessions, the better that they got. Then I started working with my sister Heidi, who's also really open spiritually and loves this work. And so we started creating courses and a live Q&A. And then it expanded into another website. It's called Athena Universe with my son Mike. And there I do more. People can submit written questions and get an answer right away, or they can belong to different platforms where I have regular transmissions that come out and I have regular recordings that come out. So it's a more intensive or a constant teaching type of thing that's available more on that Athena Universe website.
Yeah. So who is Athena?
Yeah. So what I understand is that all of us, and including the people that we are interacting with, are likened to us, or we call them streams of consciousness, or if you want to call it a vibration, or somehow the emanation is a match or similar. And that's how we have exchanges with those that are in our life. Now, that match can be from a really good feeling, or it could be from a really bad feeling. But that's generally how those connections happen. In the moment that I called out for confidence, I came into connection with a level of consciousness of which Athena, the goddess Athena, her consciousness was a part of. So I tapped into that level of consciousness. So anyone could. It doesn't mean that it's mine or that I'm the only one that could. There are many people who channel Jesus or Mother Mary, and they tap into that level of consciousness and therefore gain access to it. And that's the only way that I can describe it. They don't spend a lot of time really going into who they are, what they are. In the beginning, there was more naming and more, I've lived a life, I haven't, that type of thing. But I'm not really concerned with that anymore and don't really waste much time with it. They're primarily teachers. They really want people to get the lives that they want to get. And that's primarily what I do.
Yeah. There has been such an explosion, Robin, of channeling on the planet. And we see it here in the US, which we live in. There's people watching from other countries. I would assume that it's happening in other countries too. And I was thinking about this, and I've given it a lot of thought the last year and a half or so. And I wonder if it's because of the transition we're going through on Earth, or if it's because the fact that we now have the ability to get the message out through the internet, which we
Yeah.
did not have before. So I wonder if our ability to communicate more easily in different ways has brought in the more information? Or do you think the information is coming in because of the changes? What's
Well,
your
I think,
opinion?
I think it's both. I mean, I think that as people become more informed and they're able to watch things, their guidance system guides them in a direction, whether this is something they believe and as they perceive it, then they start to pursue it and learn more and more about it. So certainly having the internet or having people be able to access that kind of information is going to open people up. But I do think there was a call, there was some type of emotion offered as a race for in the disconnected state that we all found ourselves in, to be in a more connected state and to really get back to serving one another and more unity and oneness. And so that this is the route, this is the way to it. And so it just you're never not a creator, even when you leave the plane that you're on. When you go back and are back out of the body that you're in. Creation is always happening. It's not just here. We're not separate really from that other side, as you would call it, or heaven and earth. It's an interactive thing that's going on. We are constantly connected to the divinity part of ourselves in the experience that we're in. There's never a time when we don't have access to that energy. We either deny the flow by the way that we condemn and judge ourselves, or we allow it.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'm wondering if we can bring Athena in and I can
Yeah.
chat. So, are you a conscious channel or do you go into
Well,
trance? How does that work for you?
I afterwards I have very little remembrance, maybe for a couple of minutes. So I don't know if you would call that conscious or unconscious. I can be called back like that. I can go in like that. I don't know what to call myself really. I'm not fully aware, and I don't remember a lot of what is exchanged. But I am accessible. So if you would call my name, I would immediately come back. That wouldn't be a problem at all. And I found that the more that I do this, the more I distance myself from it, the better it gets. So in the beginning, it kind of felt like somebody was talking behind you using your name, but yet you were having a conversation with someone else that you were trying to focus on. So I felt like there was a little bit of practice at first to separate those two things. And now I don't really have that problem. I just pretty much allow, I just move out of the side, and then it just happens. Yeah, that's how.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. We'll see you in a little bit.
Yeah. We are excited to be with you here today, as always. Yeah. We love to have exchanges with those that are interested or spiritual minded. Yeah. What is it that we could talk to you today that you would find satisfying?
Oh, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all your efforts you're giving to those of us on Earth. We are going through a pretty wild time here on this planet right now. Can you give us, from your perspective, what's going on and how things are going to change on Earth over the next several years?
Yeah. Well, if you've watched a lot of our recordings, and many have who will probably be watching yours, you will find out that we're not big people on giving predictions or forecasts. Let's use that term. Yeah. What's going on? Life's going on. Yeah. It isn't anything to be afraid of. You can't possibly listen to some of the predictions that are out there and not move to a fear state. You can't do it. Yeah. Most of you are going to be immediately brought into a discomforted state as the predictions go out as what's coming in the future. There have been things like more wars, financial systems collapsing, and the like, all of these types of things. Yeah. What are you going to do about it? Yeah. You are not you yourself able to change anything when it unfolds in the world, nor have you ever been able to. Yeah. But you have always managed to navigate it. You've always seemed to come out of it. Yeah. And we would say this is going to be no different than any other time that you have gone through. One of the things that you can do with some of those predictions is to recognize what your reaction to them is. That's the most valuable observation you can make. If you move into fear, if you move into the idea that you've lost power or control and that somehow things are going to come into your world that you are not wanting, then that is a sign or signal of your own disconnection from your source and your own ability to pull in the reality that's already created. You don't hear a lot of people that are giving predictions talk about the world that's already created, do you? They talk about the world that you're presently in, that's creating the world that's already created, and then they give you ideas or thoughts that is a negative or something that you need to be afraid of in what is coming. But everything that is being felt by everyone is creating a wonderful world because it is being transmuted or lifted in the fifth dimension of reality to the level of love. The moment that you recognize alignment, and by alignment, we mean your power, your ability to create by what you are focused on and what you desire to see in the world, you become able to access that dimension, that fifth dimension of reality of where the lovely world is. So our advice would be to anyone who is worrying about what is coming, why don't you think about what's been created by what you have experienced, which is quite opposite most of the time from what humans are worrying about, you see. There's a beautiful world that is created in the divinity part of you by everything you have ever felt. It is true for you as a human, and it is true for you as a race. There is a world that stands because of what everyone has felt. That is a beautiful world. But until people can perceive it, until they can move out of fear, out of the idea that they have to be afraid, that there is a world that they can't predict, that something is coming that they prefer is not coming, what are you going to do with that? We would like you to observe it. We would like to remind you of the power that you are in alignment. We would like to remind you of the immense influence that you have over the world in just believing that you have it, you see.
When I listen to off-planet wisdom like yours, the overarching theme that I'm seeing is a desire to encourage humans to see themselves differently. To see
Absolutely.
themselves differently and to see their environment differently. And what that tells me is that we're moving into a new frequency system that is going to feel vastly different than where we've been. Can you tell us a little bit about the characteristics that are different between 3D and 5D?
In the third dimension of reality, as Robin explained to you earlier, there are three lower energy centers: the root, the sacral, and the stomach area. This is what is called the egoic state. One creates a little bit of pain and suffering, lack, not enoughness, lust, rage, anger. All of these types of emotions are available to that level of consciousness, or third dimensional reality is really felt in the three lower energy centers. As a human starts to expand by their desire to feel better than what they have been feeling, they start to unfold the energy. We talked about that too, that is lying at the base of the spine. It starts to come up into the heart center. And as this center starts to activate or open, a human starts the transitional process of recognizing that they are a creator and that they are able to create by how they think and how they feel in their experience. And when they first do this, they bobble a little bit. They go back and forth between third dimension and the fourth dimension of reality, of recognizing that they create how they feel, but then yet condemning and judging as they notice that they do something that they had sworn they were not going to do. Yeah, this is a very natural phase, and it's one that you need to love yourself in or accept as a natural process of the rise of consciousness. As you stay in this one for a while, you start to feel the ups and downs of it. You get tired of that. The call goes out to the universe that you would like to experience feeling better. And then that energy starts to expand a little bit higher. It starts to come up into the upper centers, where one learns that they can create through happiness and joy. And what does this mean? It means that a human starts to recognize that they've never been wrong, they've never done anything wrong, that there's nothing to condemn, nothing to judge, nothing to regret, nothing to do over. Yeah, they start to accept and surrender to what it is they have felt in their experience. And they recognize very quickly that as they surrender to what is felt, with no more judgment, no more condemning if they're angry or jealous or enraged, none of these emotions anymore, they just decide that they are going to allow themselves to feel their experience and send that signal to the universe and then align in the love of self. You came here as a human with free will, which means you get to pick and choose how you feel in your experience. No one said that you had to leave out negative emotions. They are good signals when one is feeling negative to the universe in what you prefer. That's what you are doing. As the divine feels you in what you are feeling, it creates an experience that is a preferred feeling experience. You can come into contact with flow simply by loving yourself in the way that you created it. You cannot judge yourself for being angry. You cannot judge yourself for your jealousy or your control or anything else that you use to create, because if you do that, you will maintain a lower tone than your source and therefore not be able to fall into the flow, which these experiences would come to you very naturally with no effort at all if you were not in a condemning and judging state, you see. Once a human understands what mastery is, I understand the process of creation. I allow my human to feel its experience in its free will. I know that my divinity part of me has received me in what I have felt. It loves me unconditionally and has no judgment and condemnation about the way that I have created in my experience. And therefore, I get the flow. The natural flow of experiences coming to me with no effort at all. Earlier in your exchange with Robin, she was talking about different levels of consciousness. And one of the levels of consciousness that she gained access to was the level where telepathy exists. She was a little bit concerned when that came to her because she would start to hear the thoughts and feelings of those that were close to her. And she thought that maybe she would have some judgment, some anger, some upset if she heard something through her mind that perhaps she felt hurt by or upset by. And we said, don't worry. Yeah, let's see what happens when it occurs to you. And shortly after it happened, in fact, she did have the experience and it was about her, but she reached for an emotion and found that it was not there. She asked us, what's going on here? Normally that would be something that would be upsetting to me. But yet, as I pondered it, as I thought about it, I had no response to it. And we said to her, how do you like the level of consciousness of which telepathy is a part of? This is what's going to happen. As you rise in consciousness, as you come into contact with fifth dimensional reality, you will no longer reach for the same emotions. They just won't be there. It's not that you're going to effort. It's not that you're going to police yourself. It's not that you're going to force yourself to change. It means that you have created enough openness in your field through your energy centers by letting go of your judgment and condemnation and negativity towards yourself, that the flow can now reach you and lift you to levels of consciousness where the old way of thinking and being no longer exists.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. You know, when I look back over my decades on the planet, things have shifted and consciousness has shifted so much, even in my lifetime. And I look back at experiences that were dense and heavy and maybe filled with anger, and I don't see them as anything other than really important experiences. In other words, getting to know those frequencies and understanding those frequencies, and then choosing to move into something new and something fresh. That's almost what I see humanity doing, is that we've had sort of a master class in lower frequencies. We've explored them, we've felt them, we've worked with them, and now we're moving into something new to see what we can create with this collective in a new direction. Is
Yeah.
that how you see it as well?
Um, yes, but in some degree, we would say that in the divinity part or aspect of you and of where we are, we don't look at those emotions that you were referring to as positive or negative, or sometimes even not as dense. Yeah. Everything is a signal. Everything that you are releasing from you in the form of the way that you feel is being received by the high vibration of the source that you are. And it's actually being transmuted or lifted to that level of love. You could never pull out a negative experience that you experienced and still be the woman that you are today. Yeah. Because you have created a grand woman in all that is by all that was. And it doesn't matter whether it was positive or negative. It doesn't matter whether it was a dense experience or a light experience. None of that matters. What matters is that you gave yourself permission to feel your experience and send that signal. And we would like you to look at it as not either good or bad, right or wrong, but as something that you used as a signal in the way that you felt in your experience. As time goes on and as consciousness rises, the ability to create very quickly through your focus in feeling good will start to yield you results at the high vibration that you are now emanating at very quickly. And so you will not be suffering anymore. You will not be choosing those dense emotions anymore, because you will be lifting into the level of understanding of how you create. You'll become very happy, very excited, very knowing. And then you will quickly guide yourself towards the preferred feeling or the preferred experience feeling, and then obtain that very quickly. And you will move into this mastery state where you do not any longer create from suffering, but yet from happiness and joy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. It sounds very exciting. As we move into these new frequencies, can you talk to us a little bit about the process of manifestation and how it's going to change, how it may become quicker, how you have to be a little bit more, oh, thoughtful with your thoughts?
Yeah, it is true. Yeah. Robin is laughing a little in the background. She can sometimes do that. Some days she gets up, she's a little tired, and she'll think, oh, I wish I didn't have a 9 o'clock this morning. Yeah. And soon she will get a text that that is not going to happen, that she's actually canceled her appointment, which was not her intention to do. Yeah. So you have to get very responsible, very understanding that the universe will try to satisfy you non-discriminatorily based upon how you feel. Yeah. So paying very close attention to what it is that you are desiring and the way that you are releasing that out into the field and then seeing the quick response of it is something that there will be some adjustment to. Yeah.
That's interesting. One of the things that I've learned in my own life, and it's still very nebulous for me. In other words, I can't quite, get my fingers on it or wrap my mind around it. But when I focus on something, let's say something I want to bring into my life, when I define it and let it go and then just get busy doing something else, it whirls around quicker
Yeah.
than when I define it and then start detailing it and wondering how it's going to happen and waiting for it and this and that. Why does it happen quicker when I let it go?
Because the need energy is resistive. Yeah. When a human feels as an intensity or a need for something, they actually feel some resistance in the field. We'll give you a couple of examples. And one of the ways around this, really, that Robin inadvertently found was in the purchase of a car. She had gone with her son on an outing. He had had a new job out of college, was doing quite well, yeah. And he brought her to a car dealership to buy a car, which he was going to pay cash for, which was right up Robin's alley because she has taught her children to be mindful that way, yeah. So she was in a love state, a real aligned state, yeah. And he bought the car, and she remembered just loving him, loving the day, loving the whole idea that he was not borrowing money. She was in the most satisfied, connective state you can ever imagine. As they went to leave the dealership, there was a car that looked very different, very unique, something she had never seen before. And she said to him, "What is that car?" And he said, "It is a Porsche Cayenne. Yeah, heavy car." He said, "Do you want to sit in it?" And she goes, "No, be too expensive, not be something that I would buy." Yeah. He said, "Oh, it doesn't hurt to sit in it, does it?" So we did, she said. We got in the car, put our hands on the dash, admired it, loved it, no intention of buying it. Got out of that car, went home, was talking to her husband and mentioned the car. They were in the market for a car. They needed one in their business. And she told him about the car, and he goes, "Well, let me look it up." Yeah. So he looked the car up, and he quickly found out that the car exceeded the number of pound weight that could be purchased in a heavy equipment business. So it would be fully deducted off. Yeah, that was one thing. The car that they looked at was a year and a half old, and so the price had been deducted down from that. Yeah. It did not have the large turbo engine. So once again, the price was down again. Yeah. And pretty soon he said, if you like that car, it actually costs less than the car that you were thinking of getting. Yeah. Long story short, that car was in her driveway in less than a week. Yeah. But what happened there? She released all of the resistance in her own field in the admiration and love of someone else in their field. And this is a way that a human can manifest very quickly, very easily in the admiration of others, true admiration and love of what someone else is achieving or bringing to themselves. You can actually sidestep or step over the things that are resistive in your own field. And inadvertently, the universe, guess what? It's always feeling you. It thinks it's you. Yeah. It feels you in the non-resistive state. It doesn't feel your resistance because you are applying your focus to someone else of where you are not resistant. And therefore, very quickly, the experience came in. She had a similar experience. She began channeling us. She was trying to teach her group of people that were meeting with her that they could manifest something. So we said, well, why not I don't know if it was a yellow or orange sweatshirt. She said, "I don't really want one of those." And we said, well, let's just do it for the sake of the group and see if you can't bring it to yourself. So she started out, like you said, working real hard, going to different towns and looking through racks of clothing, looking through catalogs, asking her husband to stop and let her run in this place or that place. About 2 weeks into it, she kind of got fed up with it and she released it. And she thought, you know what? I'm tired of that. About a week later, her sister had told her about a catalog where you would online, where you order clothes and you get these shipments monthly that come in. I think it was called Stitch Fix or something. Yeah. And she thought, oh, this would be kind of nice. I don't get to the stores very often. I'm in a small town. Maybe I'll sign up for this club and have some nice things to wear. So she put in her first order. She never mentioned a sweatshirt, we can assure you. Yeah. But when the catalog order came, she opened the box and right on the top was the shirt. Yeah. When she no longer cared about it, when she was no longer looking, when it was no longer in need or necessary. And not only that, yeah, this is one of the items, but she manifested another one through her book editor, yeah. And she had done the same thing. She had asked for something that was not appealing to her. She did not want to wear, had no intention of wearing. And weeks went by, and she was holding the thought now and then. And she started her meeting with her book editor, and her book editor said, as she told her the story, open your eyes, open your eyes. And there she sat wearing that article of clothing that Robin had said she didn't want to wear, she didn't like, and she didn't want to buy. But yet it showed up in her experience and it ticked off every one of those boxes that she had specified. This is how detailed you can be. Sometimes you
Yeah.
start asking for something and you think that you have to take what comes. You don't. You can actually modify or perfect, let's use that term, as you receive something, maybe a job offer or an income offer. You don't have to accept the first thing that you receive. You can take that in and you can appreciate it and you can love it. And then you can intend for something to be added to it and send it back out to the universe and get another delivery. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. As we close up here, what would you like to say to the viewers as, oh, wisdom as we move through these interesting times on the planet?
Yeah. We would love nothing more than for you to be free, for you to be loving life, enjoying your life, not afraid, not worried, not focused too much on things that you wish not to see in your experience. That every time you see something that perhaps is not to your liking, that you realize the only reason that you've seen it is because there now something is, and then direct your attention to what it is you prefer by something you don't prefer. It's not that you're accepting things that you don't want. When you see someone do something that you find to be immoral or not in alignment with you, the best thing that you can do is to be grateful and appreciative for them showing you what you now prefer. And it is not that. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you have to condemn or that you have to hate or move to judgment, because in this way you will only start to experience experiences that will bring those type of feelings to you. Yeah. So use what comes to you as a signal, as the way it was meant to, and know that there is a preferred thing that is created by it, you see.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good day.
Thank you. And she's back.
Yeah.
Boy, that's quick. Do you feel a little woozy or do you have any after
Oh,
effect?
not really. Mm-mm. Feels as
Wow.
normal as, I think the important thing to let people know is you are channeling, or you wouldn't be in the body that you're in. And
Yeah.
I should ask you, are you woozy? Because it's really no different. It's the same as a human doing it. It's the same kind
Yeah.
of thing. So that's the way that I would answer that question. It's really, a lot of people, I think, even miss it. They might move in and out of channeling and not even recognize they're doing it.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think as we move forward, that's going to happen more and more.
Mhm.
Here's one question I have for you is, this is a very busy life for you right now. Probably you thought maybe things would be getting a little slower
Yes. Yeah.
and
True.
a little quieter. How is it working for you? I would imagine that it's enriching you in ways that you reflect that you never even would have thought.
Yeah. It has. I have definitely at times taken on more than was maybe good for me or in alignment with me. And so I've had to pull back a little bit as far as scheduling sessions and some of the things that I was doing. And that's why I'm kind of creating some other different avenues where I do more written things, and it works more easily around my family and around my grandkids. So, and it's a self-honoring thing. I think I've lived my whole life not saying no. I'm a person that
Mm.
whatever is asked of me, I try to do it, and even against myself sometimes. And this experience is no different than any other experience. It brought that to the forefront. It brought that possibility of sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you can't open your schedule up, even though that you want to, even though someone knows someone in the family and calls you and wants you to do it next day. Sometimes you can't do it. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me, because I've always dropped everything and usually done what's ever required of me. But the ante got raised to such a degree with so many other obligations and appointments, that to keep doing that, I would have to sacrifice my own family, So that's what kind of, it's almost like the universe brought me into a place where I had to look at that trait within myself and bring some kind of alignment to it. In a way that I was going to suffer. If I didn't have time to watch my grandchildren that week, I'm going to suffer for that. So it wasn't just about me anymore. It started to feel like it was affecting my family or my family time. So I have pulled back a little bit in that sense, and I'm picking and choosing more things that I can do remotely, or when the timing serves me best that way.
Mhm.
So it's definitely a process that you go through. Mhm.
Yeah. And I can imagine it's that whole boundaries thing.
Yeah.
Not only boundaries with those in physical, but boundaries with those not in physical as well.
Well, and here's the thing, we talk about this in sessions too. Uh, Boundaries aren't needed when there's not a problem inside. So when you have a problem inside, then you need to protect against it, don't you? And so once I started to look at my inability to serve myself first, or to consider how I felt about something first, then the people coming stopped coming. I didn't need to set a boundary. I just needed to correct what I was holding within myself that was creating the boundaries to be set, or needing me to.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautifully said. That was a great piece of wisdom there. Robin, this has just been lovely. It's been a delight to spend time with you, a delight to spend time with Athena. How do we find out more about you?
Oh, thank you so much. I have a website, athenaintruth.com. I do a lot of group activations that are on that site. I do have 90-minute sessions that I take by appointment only through my sister Heidi on the website. And I do have the Athena Universe. They can check out that website, which is a totally different platform. Everything is kind of linked together. So either one of those sites that you would go to, you would find out pretty much everything I'm doing.
Okay, wonderful. And we'll have all that linked in the description box down below, so she'll be easy to find.
The
Thank
only
you
other
again.
final thing is I am going to be at the Sedona Transcendent Retreat. So it's the first public venue that I've actually gone to with a bunch of other channelers. I'm going to be there mid-September. I think it's like the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So trying something new. That's the first time I'm going to have done that in front of a large group of people.
Oh, you'll have a great time. You'll love Sedona. If you haven't been, you've already been. It's a wonderful venue, and gosh, I wish I could be there. Maybe next year I'll see you there.
That sounds great. Nice.
All
Thank
right,
you
wonderful.
for having me.
Yeah, Robin, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.